Hey guys, tonight we are going to be diving into Cleveland Browns week with our own guy, Rich Haynes. But first, our men over at Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You're joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn.
Dude,
Aaron, I'm pretty sure me
not
stumbling over myself in the intro is a good indicator of how excited we are for this
This is gonna be a
game.
terrible show tonight. This is going to be a long. We've been complaining about having to do this show all week. I apologize to everybody tuning in. No, I'm appreciative of all you guys tuning in. This is going to be all right. Will probably be our most cathartic matchup show in a while. We're going to get past that last loss here a little bit while we preview the Cleveland Browns. But did you know it's going to snow this week, Greg? You're in Buffalo, in Western New York. Did you hear about that
rumor? I was going to wish you well and say that, it's been a pleasure working with you and I've enjoyed hosting the show.
Yeah, I may never get out of the snow, right?
But, if you're buried alive in the snow, just know that I will miss you and I will tell of your tale and make sure that people know of your story.
I appreciate that. You know what really stinks is I won't be able to get any bread or milk. Apparently Western New York's out of that. Everybody's going to be eating French toast.
So a lot of peanut butter sandwiches, maybe some bologna sandwiches.
People, man.
Plenty. But without further ado, we tried our best on Sunday. It was a painful show, but we actually got a lot of awesome feedback. We really appreciate you guys. We got a lot of really great feedback for fighting through the pain of that show and kind of talking through everything. And Aaron and I were probably a little angrier than we normally are and a little more frustrated. And I think, I've even had trouble processing my normal, rhythm of how I go through things.
Yeah.
You haven't helped. I just get frustrated because, and Eric's done some good breakdowns and the things that are there. It doesn't make sense why this team keeps stumbling and stubbing their toe and finding ways to shoot themselves in the foot because they're as talented as they are and because the peaks that we see. And every time I start getting into it, it just seems so simple to avoid those things and I get mad and angry again. So I'm ready to be able to pivot over and talk about this week 11 matchup, and who better to do that with than Cleveland's own Rich Haynes. You guys know Rich from co-hosting the Cover One Draft Show with Russ Brown, helped us kick off the Cover One Fantasy Show last year, former radio host here in Cleveland, and long-suffering Cleveland diehard fan. Rich, how we doing?
Yes, definitely long-suffering Browns fan, but I feel like we've said in a lot of the past shows, we feel that the Browns and Bills have a lot of that same mojo going, although you guys are in much better shape right now with the savior Josh Allen. And we unfortunately did not make the right choice with Baker Mayfield back in the day, back in the draft. But
we appreciate
I'm
that.
doing good. I'm doing good.
I was teasing Greg earlier in text this week because I know you guys are friends, and I was teasing whenever I see you guys on social media hanging out. I'm like, hey, that's the other bald guy that's your friend. Like, come on. And I was messaging him, and I was like, well, at least you got to upgrade to a Bills fan with all the same features, right? But you're a bald guy with a beard, but at least I'm a Bills fan. So I feel like it's 2.0, right? It's,
it was, it's the Matrix, right? It's like it's
right.
meant to be. It's the code of the Matrix is he's sending Greg.
Yeah.
Somebody that's similar to me.
We're all drinking the same Erie County or Lake Erie water anyway, right?
Speaking of which, I know, I for those of you that did follow me, I do like to engage in a little bourbon when I come and do the podcast. So I
think Greg was too. That's maybe why you slipped up.
I mean,
right here, he's drinking Uncle Jumbo's.
Look at that.
Sponsors, right there it is. The logo down
doing the work for us. Look at you.
It came all the way to Cleveland via Greg, so I had to get over there.
So, Rich, let's step back. I know, obviously, Browns fans, it's not an awesome experience right now. There was I think there was managed expectations of what would happen in this, 11 games is a long time without a highly paid franchise quarterback. I think there was middling expectations, but obviously 3-6 was not what the expectation was. and specifically this defense. Where is the mindset of Browns fans in what you have so far? And, is it already looking to, hey, what is Deshaun set up for next year? Or is it still, hey, if we can pull a couple of these wins out here, maybe those last couple 5-6 games with Watson could matter?
Yeah, and I think, Browns fans, we tend to try, well, we will be very pessimistic, but at the same time, they'll reel us back in every week, right? So I think that, if you kind of look at Browns Twitter and just the reaction, I think the last week's game broke them a little bit, losing to Miami in that fashion, coming off a bye week, coming off the performance they did against the Bengals the week before, where they, busted them on Monday night. That was a big letdown. And I think if you are rolling right now, 4-5 instead of 3-6, you could probably talk yourself into, hey, Deshaun comes back, maybe you get 5 wins out of him in those last 6 games, and you maybe, be in a position to be in the playoffs, right? So losing last week certainly hampered any expectations, and it's it's a fairly sullen atmosphere in Browns Twitter these days. But again, you start to, as the game nears, right, as the week progresses, and I think Bills fans, I see this in Bills Twitter at times too. Some optimism starts to creep back in. You go, well, maybe if we can beat the Bills in a blizzard game, maybe then Tom Brady looks a little older now. I know he's playing better the last few weeks, but maybe then you get the Bucs at home. So, some glimpses of optimism still, I would say, but I think last week, kind of broke some of the spirit a little bit, losing to the Dolphins in that fashion.
I can talk myself into absolutely anything, so I understand exactly everything you just described there. What I would like to know is this Stefanski situation, right? Like, I think he's fine. There's no hot seat there. Obviously, you go into this year, you can't put a coach in that situation. I do think they want to get him and Watson together and see what that can be. Do you think he's earned that right to have a longer leash? He had the first 10-win season, and then kind of things went off the rails with Baker and stuff like that, and now you're kind of stuck in this sort of a wash of a season for him. I always talk about this with like evaluating quarterbacks and maybe a coaching change that happens there, and then it kind of resets a clock in terms of contracts and kind of evaluating those guys. How long do you think that leash is for a guy like Stefanski? Is it the 1 year with Deshaun? Does he get a full couple of years here to reset? And this is like a full rebuild with this team. Where's he at for the future of this team?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously he's certainly all your points you brought up, certainly safe this year. And sometimes you look on social media and there's people that aren't happy. People start to grumble, is he on the hot seat? And no, I mean,
Bill's Twitter wants to put Sean McDermott on the hot seat this week. So don't listen to the fans.
There's no way he's on the hot seat. I mean, for every reason you just mentioned, and even last year, Stefanski obviously wasn't a Baker fan, and at least right now, rightfully so. Baker obviously hasn't performed down in Carolina, but you have this cross section of Browns fans that we call the Baker Bros that just loved Baker Mayfield no matter what, and just they, I think, get a little bit more upset with Stefanski and his play calling, even though I don't think it's been that bad this year. I think most people are upset at the fact that the defense is so terrible. They want him to hand the play calling duties over to be more of that GM head coach to try to help fix that side of the football. So you get that criticism, steps into play. And we'll talk a little bit about kind of game scripts with his play calling. But, in general, his offensive efficiency has been pretty good with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. So I really don't personally have a lot to complain with Stefanski. I certainly don't think he's on the hot seat this year. I definitely think he'll get a lot of benefit of the doubt going into year one with Deshaun Watson, next year, full year one with Deshaun next year. And I mean, unless things, really unravel and, they are looking terrible and losing games, I can't see him being really on a major hot seat next year either, to be honest. But hey, it is the Browns and it is Jimmy Haslam, and we don't have a great history of keeping coaches around. So never say never, but I think he's okay.
Yeah, I think one thing we can look at quick here before we go into into the specifics was a little bit in the injuries. Obviously the Bills fans have been, pretty worked up on everything here. We just had 3 years in a row of like immaculate injury luck, and we're getting all 3 years worth of bad luck in one season now. And the Browns had been doing okay for a bit, but now it seems to be stacking up, and specifically some stuff along the lines where I know Wyatt Teller had to step out this last game with a calf and now was limited in practice today. And you've seen, I think Batonio was, not a participant in practice today. Do you know how things are coming along there? Any ones that are major concerns for you? I think I have a Batonio
was just a rest day today, so I think he'll be
okay,
fine for the weekend. Teller is dealing with calf. He was a limited participant today in practice. We're going to have to watch that to see if, and that's been he's been banged up, in my opinion, for most of this year, even in the games he's played. And obviously he was a tremendous offensive line asset last year, and even in the year before. So him, being banged up certainly doesn't help. Also their center, Ethan Posick, who is, came over, I believe, from Seattle this year, really is playing very nice at the center position, was an undrafted guy. He's banged up a little bit, limited participant as well at ankles. So you really, from a Brown standpoint, if you want to beat the Bills this weekend and obviously run the ball potentially in a weather game, you got to have one of those two, in my opinion, healthy. I think Bitonio, like I said, I think he's going to be fine. It's just a rest day. But, Jack Conklin also was listed with a foot. He was a full participant today. So, but the two to worry about, Wyatt Teller and their center, Ethan Posick. Posick, you got to hope one of those two are there for the game.
And Greg, on our side with that injury report, are we worried with anything besides Tremaine? Do we have concern on any of that? Obviously, Josh Allen, I thought it was kind of weird how we are going to assume he's just going to continue to be in this sort of limited, not throw a lot at practice.
They're going to baby him during the week. And
absolutely. And he's going to be good to go. So I didn't love how they're like, oh, he's in a brace again. I think that's going to be par for the course here for a while. And Tremaine's the only one. It's like, man, if it's going to be slippery, I don't think there's going to be snow impacting the game necessarily even. But if it's those types of conditions and groin and the heel, that sounds tough for me. That's the one I'm monitoring.
Yeah, well, obviously it's also weird that all of a sudden 5 guys came in with a non-COVID illness, but 5 guys coming down with an illness. My house right now has RSV and that stuff running all through it. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't expecting Rousseau back. Getting Poyer back to practice today was a great indicator. That was a really positive one. Man. So I need to see those illness guys come back because Jordan Phillips, Matt Milano, some guys that we need. And even rotationally with Tim Settle and the options Gilliam gives. I like seeing Poyer and Elam back. Obviously, Trey's not even on the injury report anymore.
Yeah, we can talk about that
practicing,
later.
And we'll talk about that one later. So I think realistically, it's Edmonds, and then I'm not expecting Rousseau at all. So I think that it's pretty much just Edmonds and then the illness guys coming back. But I'm not expecting Edmonds this week. Tomorrow's the real indicator. I think that if we get a limited tomorrow, maybe it's there. But with the conditions, plus him just tweaking it just this Sunday at halftime.
In their history of how they've handled it, right?
Yeah, I expect them to sit him, unfortunately. I think, especially against a run-heavy team like Cleveland, that's
tough week for it.
Yeah, that's a bad loss. They have your middle linebacker out.
Two other injuries I want to talk about real quick, Greg, for the Browns that I think are potentially impactful here. One, doesn't look like Njoku's going to be back, and that's been killer for the Browns. I mean, they love to run those 2 tight end sets where both are can be a blocker or a pass catcher. Njoku's been a really improved run blocker over the last year and a half. And he's, obviously a specimen out there. So, he hasn't really put up Pro Bowl numbers in the receiving game to this point, but he's a factor that defenses have to pay attention to. And I'm pretty sure he's going to be out again this weekend. So that's tough for the Browns. And then JOK coming back likely this week for the Browns should be a nice, big need with our D tackles being as porous as they are, and we'll get into that here in a little bit, having all they can at the linebacker position, I think is going to be really important.
Greg, I'm going to cut in line then because that's a great.
Go ahead.
For us here because I want to talk about this defense, this matchup, Bills offense versus the Browns defense here, and obviously we'll get it right out of the way. Myles Garrett's the concern when you're lining up against the Browns, right? And this is one of these guys that there's really nothing I can say about him that hasn't been said out there before, but it's just one of those guys that. He's going to get his. I always compare it to the NBA. LeBron comes into town, Giannis comes into town. They're getting their 30-something. They're going to get pressures on Josh. He's not necessarily going to get sacks, but he's going to impact the game in some way. You got to just kind of try to contain him. So I don't know if there's anything else necessarily for you to say about Garrett. If you want to just sit here as a Browns fan and gush about him for a second, you're more than welcome to have that platform because he's fantastic. But it really all starts there, right?
Yeah, no, Miles certainly is a phenomenal player, but I will say that he does get caught up, in a vertical pass rush quite a bit. And defensively, from a schematic perspective, because they have to hide their D tackles, they try to use their defensive ends to pin the plays inside. But he will get too vertical because he wants to get after that quarterback, right? Yeah. So he runs himself out of plays a lot this year, more so than I think I've seen in previous years, which obviously is to the benefit of, any team we're playing. And if you kind of look at his numbers, 7.5 sacks this year, certainly not terrible. But I don't think he has been as impactful of a player this year as he's been in years past. Now, certainly teams have to, game plan for him. He's getting a ton of double teams, all that stuff. That's, I'm not saying Miles is a bad player by any stretch. He's phenomenal. But I do think a chink in his armor a little bit this year is the fact that he's getting too vertical on the pass rush and getting himself out of position and out of plays. And again, because of the porous defensive tackles, both him and Clowney they're being asked to do stuff they usually wouldn't be asked to do.
Well, and I think it's the issue for Garrett, and actually what I think one of the Bills looking at this matchup, even though he's sort of this game wrecker, I do think a good game plan is sort of go at him in the run game, sort of attack his side of the field because of some of that over aggressiveness that he's going to present. I think he's trying to do too much. There's not a lot of talent around him in this front seven. And I think that's unfair to a player like that. You hear Von Miller talk about it. One of the reasons he loved playing in LA was playing with an Aaron Donald, coming here and playing with some of the guys along the lines. It's super important for a guy like a Myles Garrett to have additional interior pass rush that's going to take up some blocks or just create some pressure. So I think he's trying to do too much. I don't blame him for over pursuing on some of that stuff, trying to create pressures and wreak havoc, but I do think it becomes something you can attack. But yeah, I want to kind of focus in on this interior defensive line, because I do think in watching the Browns and looking at all the data that I've seen about the Browns, it really seems to start in the middle of this defense right there, right now. Not a lot of depth. Is this priority number one for the Browns in this offseason? Is this something you got to attack?
Absolutely has to be. I mean, if you think go back a couple of years, they had Sheldon Richardson, they had Larry Ogunjobi, and they let those guys go. And now they're dealing with, situations where I actually, read some nice pieces this week on, hey, we try to address the defensive tackle position through the draft and, 4th round picks, but we haven't been able to land that big free agent. We haven't spent that draft capital. And we're not going to be able to unless we make some moves because of the Watson deal. And it's a concern because, again, you have Jordan Elliott, middle round guy, Tavian Bryant, who was undrafted, Tommy Togiai out of Ohio State, middle round guy, and none of them have really stepped forward. They drafted Perry Winfrey out of Oklahoma this year. He's had more off the field issues than done anything on the field, and it's been bad. And Anthony actually was on. I was checking out his show before, and I was going to bring this up on our show. Gap runs, where you get the defensive line moving one direction, then just punch them vertically with a counter.
Yeah,
absolutely destroys this interior defensive line. I talked with Greg at lunch today. There were holes so big against Miami that I don't care who your linebacker was, that you couldn't fill it. Yeah. And they're just letting a 29th run offense crush them last week.
Yeah, and I think that goes perfectly into that. I actually like the Cleveland Browns linebacking core, and I think that sort of hybrid of JOK, and I want to get your opinion on what they're going to be doing when he comes back here and how they're going to bring him back in. But I like Deion Jones. Like, I like Taki, and they fly to the ball, but I do think Bills fans should know this more than anyone. It really matters who plays in front of you. And so I think that interior line issue for you guys leaks to the outsides with issues for the edge rushers, but I also think it leaks out to issues behind them, which is where you're seeing the struggles in the run game. Because I think your back is pretty fine. I like your defensive backs. I like the edges. I think in the middle, I still actually like the linebackers, but I think the issues of the interior bleed directly next to it and behind it too much right now, where it's bleeding out.
Yeah, you can't keep JOK clean right now,
right?
Because he's, when you have offensive linemen getting to that second level, and obviously he's not the biggest linebacker. He's fast. He's very, he's agile, but you get a body on him, he's going to get caught up in the wash. Also, schematically, I don't think Joe Woods has done a great job of just allowing him to see ball, get ball. They drop him coverage a little bit too much, in my opinion. I think he just needs to go be a playmaker like he was at Notre Dame, and I think that's on Joe Woods a little bit. So JOK certainly has not been the impact linebacker I think everyone thought he was going to be to this point. He's made some plays here and there, but in my opinion, his name hasn't been called nearly enough. And the Browns have tried at the linebacker position with Anthony Walker from the Colts, who got hurt. Jacob Phillips, a draft pick, he actually wore the green dot a little bit earlier this year, also got hurt. And now bringing in Deion Jones, who I agree I like, but he's only been in the system for a couple weeks, so he's still getting used to that. So on paper, the names at linebacker with Taki, who's had 2 phenomenal weeks really in a row. The Bengals game was awesome. Even last week he played good in the loss. JOK and Deion Jones look good, but they're not up to par right now from a play standard. And you're right, the defensive tackles certainly hurt that. Secondary, real quick to comment on that. On paper, again, I love the names Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome and JJ3, John Johnson III, and even Grant Delpit at LSU. John Johnson III, he has struggled, and there's a lot of lack of effort in a lot of plays that you see where he's just jogging to the ball. He did wear the green dot against Cincinnati and did some nice things from, getting the defense set up, but he's been, in my opinion, a disappointment coming over from the Rams. Denzel Ward, when he's on the field, is nice, but he's had concussion issues throughout his career, which has really hampered him. I think Greg Newsome's an okay second cornerback, but there's been a lot of inconsistencies in that secondary. And again, on paper, the names look exciting. They haven't played up to, I think, their potential. And I think a lot of that does have to do with Joe Woods from a scheme standpoint. I think he has not done a great job from a defensive coordinator standpoint.
Yeah, I think in those defensive backs, I think challenge those guys to make tackles, especially if it's going to be a weather game. Same way that you're going to do with Bills. Like you saw the Bills last week, their defensive backs struggled to make tackles in the run game. That's where I'm attacking, is aggressive at Myles Garrett and then get to that second level and make those guys make tackles, because they don't seem to want to get up and really get super physical for their corners.
Yeah, Delpit will get up there a little bit, but he swings and misses a lot. He'll go for that home run hit and he'll swing and miss. But he had some good sticks against Miami too, though. So he had one of his better games against Miami, in my opinion.
Well, and you mentioned it earlier with that Stefanski's not, but obviously Woods is on the hot seat, and I think I think it'll be surprising if he ends up keeping his job here when the season's done. And a name that I'll throw out there for Browns fans, in the same way that kind of everybody debated on, hey, how much of it was Josh and how much of it was Dable, but Dable kind of got the opportunity from it. We've seen a huge step forward this year with the Bills defensive line. And I do think we could see Eric Washington get another chance. He was defense coordinator in Carolina. He's done a really nice job with the Bills D line this year. Some will wonder, hey, who wouldn't do well when you add Von Miller into the mix? But I don't think it's crazy to think he's one of the names you could see floating out there for Carolina as a replacement for Joe Woods.
Well, we can't just overpay for Brian Flores and back up the Brinks truck, because that's what Brown's Twitter is saying is going to happen. So I'm going to go with it. That sounds great. That sounds great to me.
I was going to say, I could think of worse things. I actually always liked Flores. That was also a weird ending. But let's flip over and get to the offensive side of the ball here. And it's so weird. I think that obviously Browns fans rightfully feel really good about Teller, and it's like one of those things where you dated a girl in high school or college, but it wasn't super serious. And then later on you see like, oh, so she ended up being a smoke show and a doctor. Oh, I probably should have tried a little harder with that. We probably should have tried to figure out how to make that work a little bit more. And now seeing him, flourish in Cleveland, that's been a painful one for Bills fans. And now you add that in where getting a player, when so many of the other guys are significant draft investments with Wills and even Bitonio, the longtime second rounder, but having a guy like that, where now you add in a player like Teller that you got for a song in draft choices, that offensive line has been the engine that's driven this offense for a while. And the fact that they're able to produce with a quarterback like Brissett really speaks to how powerful that offensive line is.
Yeah, the offensive line is great, and Teller, especially from a run blocking perspective, he is a beast. I mean, he just has some blocks out in space that completely destroy defenders, which is fun to watch. If you look at the PFF rankings through the line for the Browns, I think they're sitting fourth right now in the NFL. But in my opinion, because they've been nicked up a little bit this year, I don't feel they've been as dominant of a unit as they were last year. Now, it's still very good. Don't get me wrong. But I think some of the injuries, I am not seeing that same push at times as I saw last year for this running attack. And from a pass blocking perspective, they leave some things to be desired, even though Jacoby Brissett hasn't been, sacked to the level of like a bottom tier quarterback. But they leave some things to be desired in the pass blocking area, especially Jed Wills. Jed Wills, in my opinion, has been underwhelming a little bit from a standpoint. I mean, I think everyone here in Cleveland would prefer we would have taken Tristan Wirfs over him. That was the choice. And I think if we could go back and do it again, we probably would. I'll put it on record right now. I bet over under, I'll set 2.5 penalties on Jed this week against the Browns. I mean, he's good for at least one hold and offsides, so it's usually 2 penalties, sometimes 3. So I'm going to set 2.5. I think the weather will get to him, which is, is tough. And, he was a right tackle, moved to left tackle. He's a big body. He's pretty good in the run, run blocking, but his footwork isn't great, in my opinion, from a pass blocking standpoint. So, there's some opportunities there against this offensive line, even graded at 4th in the NFL. I think that is, the grade is a little higher than what they've been playing at this point.
So I know you talked about, Njoku probably won't be back here. Harrison Bryant's been solid. I think that fans know how good Amari Cooper was, and the fact that, the Browns kind of just, got him as a gift from the Cowboys because of their weird salary issues. But the guy that I want to ask about that I don't maybe think people realize, I've been really impressed with how Donovan Peoples-Jones has come on. And I think that especially when Watson comes back and you get a guy who can put the ball wherever, I think there's a chance he could really be a breakout player that people start to really know more about and put in. He's always been an elite athlete, but never could really put the more mature elements of receiving together. And it seems like he's starting to put that together here this year.
Yeah. Cooper is a steal. You've mentioned that fifth round pick. I mean, absolute steal. He's a great route runner. He's everything you want I don't know if he's a true elite number one, but he's everything you want in a wide receiver, and really started the year off really well with Jacoby. That's fallen off a little bit. And I think that's just lack of targets for whatever reason. I think he only had 3 targets last week against Miami, which was a little head scratching, but to DPJ, he has really progressed, especially over the last 6 or so weeks. If you just look at some target shares on him real quick, 9, 7, 5, 6, 9, 9 targets against Miami, 99 yards. He's really progressed, and Jacoby's starting to really trust in him as an option downfield. And I think he actually would probably be in a better spot with his own development if he had better quarterback play last year, with Baker Mayfield. I think Jacoby's brought some nice things out in him, and I agree. I think when Deshaun's there, he's going to end up being a nice weapon for them to where they're going to have 2 solid wide receivers moving forward. And, David Bell, draft pick out of Purdue that hasn't got a lot of run yet this year, I think also will start to emerge a little bit more when you have Watson on the field. But DPJ is somebody you're going to have to watch. He's going to make some plays vertically down the sidelines. And, he's usually good for a couple nice plays over 15 yards, type catches per game right now.
And real quick, one thing about Peoples-Jones is just go blue.
Oh, the blue. Oh, wait.
I forgot about that. So
you know what, though? It's okay. I don't mind that you played for Michigan as long as you came up with the Browns.
I would love to have Terry McLaurin on the Bills.
Yeah. See. So one last one on the offensive side, this backfield, the Bills ended up trading for Nyheim Hines. I know Kareem Hunt was a really common discussion. And I think I have a feeling phone calls were had between those two organizations on Hunt, but I just, the same way with Myles Garrett, Nick Chubb is just so fantastic to watch. And I know the workload management that I think that, you've hinted at some of those things, and having a backfield mate like Kareem Hunt and having teams just key in on what's there. I don't know if fans really realize how unbelievable of a runner he is with the combination of managed usage in a shared backfield and attention from the defense, and the fact that he still produces anyway. So, how do you think the team uses Nick Chubb in what he could be if he was a Jonathan Taylor or Derrick Henry of a centerpiece?
Yeah, not enough.
Yeah.
No, that's a common theme with Browns Twitter and Browns fans is we don't use Nick Chubb enough. You go to Browns games and literally they will chant Chubb when it's 3rd and 3, and Stefanski will get a little too smart for his own pants and try to do some crazy roll-up bullshit with Jacoby Brissett. But Chubb, and as I mentioned to you pre-show, it's very strange. They kind of have this analytical approach where, for whatever reason, they feel that 18 carries is kind of a sweet spot for Nick Chubb. I'm sure a part of that is workload management. They want to make sure he's fresh, that type of stuff. But when they get him 20 carries, they've won all 3 games this year. And I don't think it's game script. We talk about game script. They've only been down big to the Dolphins and Patriots. So it's not like they're behind in these other games by multiple touchdowns and they have to throw the ball to come back. Again, their 4 losses are brought combined 9 points to the Jets, to the Ravens, to the Chargers, and to the Falcons. I think get Chubb another 5, 6, 7 carries in some of those games. You probably win a couple of those, and it's a much different situation sitting at, again, a 5 and 4 instead of a 3 and 6 right now. So I don't think they utilize Chubb quite enough, especially even in the passing game. I know Hunt's a better pass catcher, but Chubb's not bad at it. So I wish they would use him a little bit more. And Hunt this year, love Kareem Hunt, runs like, with his pants on fire. He's had to, kind of a checkered past too, but in my opinion, that stuff's all beside him. He's a great teammate. He's been great in the community since all that kind of stuff. That whole situation, I think, is is what it is. But I think it's kind of past him. But he has not been as effective this year. I think he's down to 3.8, 3.6 yards per carry. That's not Kareem Hunt-esque type numbers. He's not being utilized as much in the pass game. So the combination of him being not quite as effective and, clamoring for more Chubb kind of makes you kind of want, Stefanski from a play calling perspective to call, Chubb's number a little bit more.
All right, man. You know what time it is. You've seen the show before. It's time to get you here, to put you on the spot. I want to get a prediction. You can do it with big snow, a little bit of snow. That's fine. We did it last week with Keenum or Allen to get multiple predictions out there. So wacky weather, you can give a prediction for that if you'd like. But we're going to put you on the spot. I want to hear how you think the game's going to go and then a final score prediction from you.
Yeah, I want to be optimistic about this, but I saw a team, in my opinion, from the Browns last week that gave up a little bit in that Miami game, and that's one thing I don't think you can ever account for, right? I think they were hoping they were going to be in a different spot going into this game against the Bills and being where, okay, hey, if we just win one of these next two, or heck, even if we lose these next two, it's still possible that we can make the playoffs when Deshaun comes back against a really nice schedule to finish the season with the last 6 games. And I saw, especially on the defensive side, a lot of bad body language last week. So that concerns me more than anything. That's something you can never account for. I do think the weather will help if it is, snowy. If it's just cold, I don't know. I'm sure Josh throws the ball just fine in cold and wind.
The wind could be a little. The wind is the one thing I think might be a factor, but yeah, I think it's going to be more gusts, not like consistent 30 mile an hour.
So I think, unfortunately, the Browns lose this one. I'm not sure what the spread is right now, but I would pick
think it's
the Bills.
8.5.
I would pick the Bills to probably cover that. I think a 10-point win is very possible for the Bills. A couple things the Browns could get them in trouble. Also good. They go for it on 4th down correctly the third most in the NFL. I know the Bills are number 1. It's the Cowboys, I think, and us, I think, are 2-3, something like that. I think that's a good situation. But in a game like this, if one of those plays goes wrong and then you get behind, and it's the same Miami game again, and so I don't have a ton of optimism. But if they do get out, and they start to run the ball and establish a little bit of lead, you never know. But I think the Bills cover the spread, and it would have to be, in my opinion, some sort of wacky ending like last week's game where the Bills lost in the most Browns fashion ever. So it's interesting that I'm on and the Browns are your next opponent, because
these games are historically not good.
That was a Brownsy. No, yes, these games are between the Browns and the Bills are usually
the last one of these. I was in Massachusetts at a bunch of Patriots fans' house. I had to finagle how to get the game on the TV there, and it was a terrible game. The Bills should have won that game. Baker Mayfield had no business driving down the field in that game, by the way. But it was just like an ugly football game and a long line of ugly games. But then when we drove home that night, hit a blizzard on the way back through Buffalo, just lake effect snow, just dumping on us. Just a typical, just crappy Buffalo, Cleveland, Lake Erie weekend for me.
Yeah. Right. Rich and I had a stretch that I think we went to 6 Browns Bills games in an 8-year stretch. And the one of them,
if you guys can survive that, you guys are going to be friends for life.
The Derek Anderson game, right?
God, the 6-3 Derek Anderson game, the ridiculous snow game in Cleveland that was horrible. The horrible snow game in Buffalo. I think there was a Monday night game that was actually a reasonably fun game.
That EJ got hurt.
Yeah,
he got hurt going out by, but it was a fun back and forth.
Points scored in an actual football game.
Hoyer was we had a rough stretch that year too. I think Brian Hoyer was and people in Cleveland believed in it.
Yeah, his mom works with my wife at the hospital, so there you go. I don't know.
I think Derek Anderson. We had the good Derek Anderson year.
There was the Derek Anderson might be the future for 8 games. That was cool, but it is what it is.
The franchise has had some Kelly Holcomb crossover as well.
Kelly Holcomb,
we're talking about
Kelly Holcomb. He had good barbecue sauce. He had that one crazy playoff game against Pittsburgh that they almost won.
There you go, man.
Charles G, real quick. I saw a question how often the Browns use play action. And they like play action. They don't do it as much this year as they did last year with Baker, but Jacoby Brissett is nice in the play action. He actually uses his legs a little more than you would think. He's not obviously super fast, but he's mobile enough. I think he had 40 yards on the ground last week against Miami. So Jacoby actually, he's kind of like your guy's old friend Tyrod Taylor to an extent, where he's a little bit risk adverse, but I think he's a better version of Tyrod Taylor with the ability to throw the ball vertically a little bit. And he's going to make some plays. They like to try to switch it up. They're not, they don't just run the ball on first down. They do try to switch it up. You'll see Jacoby passing on first down. And I think you will see some play action that should play into their, their hands a little bit if they can establish a run and not fall behind, right away. But I saw that question, so I thought it was a good one.
No,
I like it. I like it.
That's a good one. So, thank you for everything tonight. Obviously interested to see. I do think that there's some interest, next year going into things. If the coordinator comes together and having a full season with Watson, I think there is the talent there to be in the mix. But it is a super weird scenario now of bringing a guy back with those 5-6 games and where it goes. So we'll be watching with interest here. But appreciate your time tonight.
All right. Hey, thanks, guys. Nice seeing you.
Hey, thanks, man. Enjoy the weekend.
All right. So obviously looking at, what we're coming in, this isn't the last time that we had a game where like, oh yeah, it's really similar to our conversation with Connor in the Jets game. Like, well, of course we expect the Bills to win, but I think if there's anything the Bills have showed here, it's that, we can beat Kansas City because we did. We can house Tennessee, and now they're rattling off wins. We can beat Baltimore, but now we also have shown we can maybe lose to anyone too. So I really need them to get right in this game. The Browns, as Rich said, some of the body language, some of their, however you want to use the term, focus hasn't been there. They have to be able to get their stuff together and beat this team.
Yeah, an interesting thing, though, you talk about some of those Bills games. According to PFF, Bills' strength of schedule played is first in the NFL so far this year. So
good chunk there.
It is a
they
good
only
chunk.
went over like 60% winning percentage, I think.
And I think that's getting lost a little bit here in this chunk because there was conversations, Greg, that we were having in that first 6 games of, hey, we could be 3-3, right? Like I think it's who they've lost to and the how hurts too. That is giving people like pause, but you saw the circle of parity was closed last week in the NFL. That is going to be the case. There's a good chance that like the Vikings can go and drop a game to a team like the Patriots. That doesn't mean the Patriots are going to be better than the Bills. That's just the way the NFL
Heck, Washington is worse than any team we lost to, and Philadelphia lost to them by 11.
Correct. Yeah. It's a weird league. It's so hard to win with consistency. And if you're making the mistakes that the Bills are making right now, it is very hard to do. But I think I've been leaning into, hey, I see the data. I go back and I watch these teams. And for 3 weeks in a row, I've come away with the same feeling. And I still feel that way about this week. And I'm not coming off how I feel about this Bills team just because of the problems that they've had, because I don't think those teams beat the Bills. I really think the Bills beat themselves. And so I'm banking on them to get some of this stuff right and clean some of it up, and that they'll get back to being the team I think they are that should cover these spreads and continue to roll through some of these teams.
Yeah. And before we get into a little bit more of that matchup and the DVOA of it, I want to go in and share one of our new partnerships that we have going here. We're really excited about it and want to go through what we have offered from our friends at BetUS. Hey guys, Cover One is excited to announce our new partnership with BetUS. BetUS has a live wagering on all major games, the best betting variety in the business, and an easy deposit and withdrawal process with the fastest payouts in the industry. Our loyal Cover One fans get a choice between 2 exclusive offers, either a 125% sign-up bonus on your first deposit up to $2,500 or a free $50 bet with no deposit required. Just use promo code COVER1 on the links provided in the show description below. BetUS, where the game begins. Man, whoever did that BetUS read was really good.
You read fantastic. Well. That's nice.
So let's go through and share with the people when you talk about why I felt the way that I did about this matchup and some of the things that you did to research it, why we feel as strongly as we do about this matchup with this week's DVOA.
Yeah, and again, for those that don't know, it's a defense value over adjusted. I'll try to put in the show notes here a link to what is DVOA. I encourage every fan, if you're not interested in it or haven't learned about it, go look it up. It's a very good statistic that compares to the league average of how a team performs. It's called defense over adjusted, but it also applies to the offense. So it's a very good statistic and it's real time.
the best analogy I can give people is they take everybody on even footing. And when the Bills play Kansas City, they compare, hey, how did you do against Kansas City versus how everyone else did?
On
and
a per
hey,
play basis, right?
Correct. On every single play. Yeah. So on every play against the Jets, how did you do compared to how everyone else did against the Jets? And then they compare that to say, hey, compared to how everyone else is doing per play against those opponents, you guys did this. And that's why you find the Bills, because like you mentioned before, they've played the hardest schedule so far and have performed the best on defense adjusted value over average against that opponent base with what their ranking is here.
Yeah, and so I get really frustrated when people put out yardage statistics and things like that, because this does have a little bit more in terms of context, right? Because you can have a few games where the yardage is out of control. It doesn't necessarily translate to efficiency or production or anything like that, or how did you perform versus your peers. And that's really all I care about, is how is I see flaws in this Bills team, but how is it stacked up against their peers? So here, let's take a look. Again, clean sweep here for the Bills this week. Overall, they're first. Cleveland's 15th. Offense overall, the Bills are fifth. Cleveland's actually sixth. I think that probably surprised a lot of people this week, how good and efficient their offense has been this year. Bills defense shot up to first. Greg, we were talking in the post-game show, and I kept kind of saying, like, man, it just didn't feel like the defense played as bad as I feel like they played right now, right? And as we went through the week, I watched primarily the Bills defense back, and it actually was really good tape, full of good tape. And I think that this shows that too. And
one bad play, one bad play that people cling to in that drive, but they had so many good holds and stops of either getting off the field or holding to a field goal in critical spots.
People were disruptive. Ed Aller was disruptive. So there's so many good things that came together, and you see here they launched up to first in DVOA overall on defense. And this is where the matchup I think really hits the road here. Is the defensive DVOA for Cleveland is 31st in the NFL, and that's the worst we've seen so far this year when it comes to DVOA. We've seen some lower 20s.
It's crazy.
Yeah, we've seen some in the the 20s floating around there, but not this low. Yeah, and you're right with the names. It's hard to see. And then special teams is always one that you never know in a game with maybe some possible weather or wind. This could rear its head. Bills are 7th overall, and Cleveland is 20th overall in DVOA.
It's tough, and it shows you why. It's not confidence. It's not saying that I'm sure that the Bills are gonna smoke the Browns here. It's that they need to. They need to get right. They need a get right game. They need to be able to get themselves on even footing and start to show the consistent capabilities. Because obviously, sitting at 6-1, and there were the same fans right now. Heck, a 10-point win over Green Bay, we were treating like a loss because the bar had just gotten so high. And now to combine that, the same fans who were sure that we were going undefeated and already picking out their spot in the Super Bowl parade now want McDermott fired and want people benched and want Dorsey fired and want sweeping changes. You said it really, really well. Winning cures everything. They need to get a win. They need to be able to get their heads back right and get themselves ready for what can be still a really exciting run.
That's my thing about this matchup, Greg. I can look at all this data. I got more data. We could talk about this for 2 hours tonight about the data for the matchup and how this plays out. I don't care about any of it right now. I don't care who they were lining up against this weekend. The Bills need to get this right. They need to correct some of the stuff. They need to stop playing sloppy football, and they need to, not a signature win, because Cleveland isn't the team you do that against, but it's the win of, you got to beat the teams you're supposed to, and you got to beat them by the margins you're supposed to beat them by. Clean up the stuff and start handling the people you're supposed to. That's the type of win I need to see this weekend, that the Bills are still that team, because that's who I believe they are. My expectations for this team haven't changed whatsoever. It just needs to get course corrected. They have a history with this coaching staff and players that are in this building of being able to course correct. This is not the first time they've dipped in a season. Happened last year. It's happened every year under the McDermott era. I believe they'll get it right, but it needs to start now. I don't want to go into another post-game show. I think there is a leash. I don't know that. I'm not trying to say that this is a must win. We're not there yet. There's more of a window here for that, but I just need to see you beat the teams you're supposed to in games that you're supposed to win.
So let's talk a little bit more here about whether we actually think the weather is going to be a factor. And we'll give a little kudos to our friend Mike Bundt, host over at Going Deep. Sports Center used his tweet for their discussion because, of course, the last time we had an insane Snowmageddon back in 2017 was the game against Indianapolis. Everybody remembers the Kelvin Benjamin catch and the awesome LaShawn McCoy run to be able to win it in overtime. And now, of course, Jacoby Brissett's coming in. And I think, you and I have been pretty even-handed about this.
Yeah.
Neither of us are downplaying the fact that it looks like a significant, Snowmageddon event in November here that is very, very real. And it's possible that 36 to 48 inches get dumped in certain areas. We won't know if the stadium is one of those specific areas, but it's in the band where it's possible. That's real. And that is a problem. And that is going to be a challenge. But I think, obviously anytime this happens, national weather reports like to play it up and go for the panic. And they are talking about it as though 36 to 48 inches are going to fall between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. on Sunday. And it's not. They're saying between Thursday and honestly, mostly Saturday night. I think the local weather reports I saw said it's greater than 50-50 that it might be sunny during the game on Sunday afternoon. It's just the impact on logistics and getting the parking lots cleared and getting the roads cleared to allow people to get to the game and allow the Browns to get to the game and the Bills coaches and players to drive in. You're local there. You are, as a pretty connected guy from a weather standpoint. You pay attention to that kind of thing. What do you expect, and what do you think the odds are that it actually impacts the game?
Yeah. So what sucks is I don't want to have to talk about the weather because it drives me nuts. But I'm the kind of guy that I can't leave it alone when people start talking about the weather and they're just giving out totally bad information. It drives me absolutely nuts. And I will say that I have this weird thing where there's like a couple weather people that take it very seriously that can't stand me. And they come into my mentions all the time to tell me how dumb the apps I use are and how I don't know anything about weather. So everybody, it's no matter what your niche is, there's somebody specific that's going to actually you. That's what the internet is. That's what I do now. But no, I check this all the time. Yeah, I live here. I'm about 25 or so minutes north of the stadium. So in Western New York, that could be all the difference in the world. The Snowvember, I had dusting. They had 7.
Yeah, you shared that picture of that day that you literally could still see the grass in your yard. And it was a dusting. And it was the day that it really was insane at the stadium.
And it's not far. The 25-minute drive in actual as the crow flies is not far to Orchard Park, New York. So it could push south of the stadium, not even hit it. But yeah, everything is saying they're probably going to cancel schools in the area on Friday. It's going to hit all Thursday night, Friday, sort of get out of here Sunday or Saturday late, and then be fine Sunday afternoon. If that's the case, I think most towns in Western New York are capable of handling this. I know my town here has a fantastic service for keeping the roads clean. I think most of the South towns do as well. The problem would become, I think, if it hit smack dab in the middle of the city, causing some traffic issues. You'd have infrastructure issues, like you said, potentially causing issues for people getting into the game, depending how long it goes into. But I think the NFL matters enough. This game happening as it's supposed to, so that the Bills can play on Thanksgiving, matters a lot to the NFL. I think resources will be dumped into this to make sure that everything's cleared out and everybody's ready to go for this game. So I don't see a huge impact for the game. And I just want to say, if you are on Twitter, never care about the weather on Monday or the Sunday before a Western New York event. It is absolutely going to change by major margins. We've seen it again this week. Like, everything's shifting. I guarantee you probably in the next 2 days that's going to start to drift either south or somewhere else, or it's going to get bigger. It's all going to change. So that would be my one thing, is like, check on Thursday what the weather's going to be, maybe Friday, and then you'll get a better idea of it. But I think they're going to be full go. And here's the thing, man, I thought we're done worrying about weather, Craig. Like, Josh Allen's weatherproof. We've seen him play in games that are like total anomalous weather events. And that wind game against New England, if Brian Dable and Sean McDermott got comfortable with him throwing sooner, the Bills win that game. He had no issues throwing in that game, and he could have.
Lauren always cracks us. Lauren, one of our favorite fans in the chat and one of our favorite follows on Twitter.
Hilarious, yeah.
She dated a meteorologist, and unfortunately his obsession with the weather has made her ignore forecasts entirely. So I respect it.
I will say I get the clout chasing of the weathermen that have an opportunity. They know that there's people are going to want to know what's going on with the weather this week. So
I'm going to be checking the apps twice, 3-4 times a day, every day, all the way up until the game time. I'm always obsessed with kind of looking and poking around with it. But it is what it is.
Get there. Yep.
All right. So as we kind of get our heads around this game, anything else that came up to you in the matchup or the pieces in your research that stuck out to you or you thought were interesting as we get into it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really. I looked at this whole week again from a very Bills centric, not really using it as a buy, but the whole kind of going back and seeing what's going on with this team. Is it are trends concerning that this is going to fall off the rails or anything like that, or is everything going to get right? And everything I looked at for me said that this Bills team is exactly who we thought they were. But I think the most impressive thing for me is, and a lot of my frustrations right now with Bills Mafia after that last loss was I saw a lot of people dogging on Leslie Frazier and getting mad at Leslie Frazier and some of the big moments of what happened in that game, that he's not clutch and he can't get the job done and his defense stinks and the game's passed him by. I saw a lot of these comments, man. And I've been a big fan of Leslie Frazier and this defense and what I think he deserves in terms of respect from this league. But some of the stuff that he's been able to do and for the length of time that he's been able to do it. But this Bills defense, man, is first in red zone defense. We saw that on display in this last game where they gave this offense multiple stops in the red zone and holding them to field goals to try to hold off that comeback from happening. Fantastic. And in the red zone, they're third against the pass and second against the run. In their half splits, they're this is all DVOA stats again. They're ninth overall in the NFL in the first half. In the second half, they're second overall in the NFL. In late and close games, this defense is first in the NFL in DVOA. And so all those things that people are saying about Leslie Frazier aren't true. The issue they're having right now is third in middle, they're 22nd in DVOA. And third and long, they're 28th in DVOA. And third and all, they're 17th. And this is not a trademark or a keystone of this Bills defense over the past 5 years.
Been a strong point.
They don't give up those big plays, Greg. That's something we know.
Yeah. We wanted to get teams into third and long. That was the goal of the defense.
Absolutely. And this is nothing against the guys that have had to fill in because they're in a tough spot. When you're rolling into your fourth safety, guys that are roster bubble players, like that's hard to absorb in this defense. But Leslie Frazier had those guys in position. You go look at the film and Cam Lewis was in position to make a play on that ball. He didn't make the play. There's a few plays like that where Christian Benford is in the right spot to make a tackle on Dalvin Cook. He doesn't make the play. Those things are not on Leslie Frazier. So that problem is you're missing 3 all-pros in the back. No coach can fix that. So I just think that getting if we get Poyer back, Trey White is going to come back at some point. I'm thinking that we can have.
Although I will say, probably not with the field conditions in the snow of this week. I think it might be one more week.
It's going to start
but
getting
I do think Poyer practicing today is huge.
It's huge. If you can get those guys back, I think you can fix some of the issues that we have seen rear its head. But if this defense is as good as I think it is, a lot of these problems are going to be fine. And that's the type of football you want going into December, like we talk about.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's really key. And I think it's really hard to describe how big of an impact it is to already have Poyer and Hyde out and then to lose Tremaine Edmonds and 3 of the 4 keystones in the middle of that defense. It's just really, really hard to describe how big of an impact that has in coverage and the things that are there. So now you were also missing Kyrie Elam, who is not exceptional, but gives you versatility.
Another athlete. Yeah.
It gives you versatility in man coverage. So what they're going to be able to do in disguising coverages and mixing man versus zone when you get Kyrie Elam back, when you get Trey White back, when you get Jordan Poyer back, when you get Tremaine Edmonds back. And the good news is, they're going to get all those pieces back this year. All those guys are going to play and they're going to play together. We need to stay together and to stay healthy.
Yeah.
But, those things are coming and trending that direction. We just needed to come, by that divisional stretch that you have talked about here once we get into December. So we got about 2 more weeks here to get them right. And then we need them for that divisional stretch.
Yeah. With the Trey White stuff, that also, this could be weird. It was a question asked this week. So you have the weather potentially this week, and then Detroit's another one of these turfs that people have had issues with in the past. And there's going to be some conversations probably in one Bills drive of people that think he's ready, people that think he's not. And some of that, where do you push? Where do you pull? How do you ramp him up? Some of these turfs are legitimate concerns. If he mentally isn't ready going on one of those turfs, that could be a challenge. So when do you get Trey White back and when do you start to push him back is going to be an interesting thing to see how they play that out.
Yeah. So one last thing here I want to share with you guys, a new show that we brought on board here.
Yeah.
Chris Chous has been a great addition
He's
to the
awesome,
Cover
man.
One staff. He does really good content, and we want to make sure you guys have a chance to see a little bit of what he's doing. So we cut a little clip here, and our man Chris Kepner, our producer, helped pull it together. So we're going to come back in just a minute to be able to give you our score predictions and get a thought from Chris as well. But here we want to share our new show, the Cover One Fantasy Show, just a quick clip from Chris Chous. Make sure you check it out.
Here we go. What is going on, Cover One crew? Your boy Chris Chous back again. This is week number 11, if you can believe it. Waiver wire edition. We still got players on the wire. Some players getting injured, but we're seeing a little bit of a restock on the waiver, so we got to get these players to put on our bench, restock the team for the push for the fantasy football playoffs. Your season is never done. Trust me, we can get through all the bad stuff and get you in the playoffs as well. You just got to make it to the dance, and then you got a chance at the championship. So let's dive in. Waiver wire week number 11. The wide receivers, we got some big ones. Kadarius Toney still rests on the wire, under 50%, 49.4. And if you didn't listen to me the past couple of weeks, it was you had to get Kadarius Toney on your roster and put him on your bench. He's playing with Patrick Mahomes. How did you not have him on the bench at least over 50% by now? He scores his first touchdown, over 17 points in half PPR. So you got to love what he's doing in that respect. Eventually, he's going to be a fixture in this offense. Yes, his targets did come because Amy Cole Hardman was not on the field. So then when McCole comes back, I believe he's got an oblique injury. So maybe it's a multi-week injury as well. They could utilize Toney that way. But Kansas City has shown that they will spread this ball around. On top of that, Juju Smith-Schuster goes down with that massive hit, the concussion. So his status is up in the air for next week, where Kadarius could fill a lot of vacated targets in that respect. 22.5 points on the season for a Kadarius Toney must-add wide receiver. Christian Watson also, man, has a big day, the coming out party for him.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about what Chris has added to the staff here, and wanted to just share a little bit for you guys to be able to check it out. But as we get ready for our predictions here, we want to bring on our man Chris Kepner as well. Figure out what's going on here. Chris, welcome aboard. Thank you for all the work you've been doing. We'll start with you. What are your thoughts? What are you expecting for this game, and what's your score prediction?
Oh, I have to go first, huh?
Yeah, well,
That is how it goes.
It's more fun.
We'll drag you out here to embarrass you in front of everyone, obviously.
A lot of talk about snow, but I feel like the field is going to be clear. It's a get-right game for Josh Allen and the Bills. 31-17, smashing the over.
Like it.
I do like that. I'll take over after that because I'm close. I'm 27-17. I don't think there will be snow issues, but I do think it'll be windy. I think there'll be snow sort of intermittent through the game that maybe causes some disruption. I don't think the Bills get totally over some of the sloppy play yet, but I think it starts to, we saw a lot of good from Josh Allen in that game while we're frustrated in some of the big moment stuff. I think Josh is now really pissed about how all that went. So I think we see some really light the world on fire, Josh Allen, but I think they're going to be able to pull it back a little bit, and that the Browns scored late to make that game maybe seem a little bit closer than it is, and get it within a 10-point game, because games are always a little bit closer looking than they actually are in the NFL sometimes.
So I do think this is a get-right game. I do think that they take it very seriously, and I think the points Rich touched on earlier, this is a horrendous run defense, and I think that they're going to be able to get some of those things going. I do think that because of that, they settle for some points here or there, so maybe not all touchdown drives. So I got a little bit of a wacky score. I've got 33-16. I think both teams see, 3 field goals, maybe even 4 field goals, and get it kind of going that direction, but the Bills just have too much power. And this is one of those games where I don't know if the Browns are going to make the Bills punt. So 33 sounds like a weird score, but that's actually 7 scoring drives. And I think it's one of those games where I'm not sure if the Bills punt the ball, because I don't know that they're going to be able to force those kind of 3 and outs that we saw the last couple of weeks. And I think that this is a game where I want to see Ken Dorsey get right as much as I do the team. I want to see him get, not only creative, but lean into some of the things that we see working well, some of those outside zones, some of those things where you get the athletic lineman out in space. This is the week to be able to show the capabilities to do that, because you can still come back and hit with some of those counters and some of those, inside power where you can still move the ball against those defensive tackles. So I want to see a good mix of that. And I think maybe we see one of our better running performances of the season.
I hope so. I want to see Josh get running too.
Yeah,
I think you attack this team with some quarterback stuff, especially in the red zone.
Some of that QB draw.
Right. Yeah. Run all over these guys. I'm all for it. So yeah, I do think that the get right aspect here is there, and that I need it. I don't want to come on this post game show. Chris, you saw us going in the green room getting ready for the show. I don't want to do that again.
I want to get a win with Chris as a producer. Right
honestly,
now.
We're gonna have to fire Chris.
Yeah, honestly, he's been a huge help, but he's
the Packers. I was
okay, all right. We'll give you partial credit.
I know.
I don't know. The comment section did not
One
feel like a
hand
win
you're
to
out.
me.
Yeah, but no, we appreciate all your help, Chris. You've been a huge addition to the show. We appreciate it. As we'll let Chris drop down and finish his duties here. Aaron, any final thoughts for the people?
Yeah, no, anyone that's in Western New York, man, I hope you guys do stay safe. Take the weather. That's the one thing I want people to take seriously is traveling and the weather. Don't listen to people that say, oh, it's not that much. It's not a big deal. It is going to be a serious weather event. So I hope that everybody stays safe here this week. And I know a lot of families are getting an early head start on some Thanksgiving traveling and stuff too. So I hope that doesn't interrupt anything for families, because I know people need that in their lives and get everybody together. So other than that, I hope the Bills get right, get healthy. I want to start having more celebratory Bills Mafia, man. We're way too much in a rut. There's a lot of people coming at each other, and people getting crazy about what they want the coaches fired, things like that.
I want to crack an Uncle Jumbo's.
Man, we need to crack some Uncle Jumbo's and just chill out and let this team get rolling again. That's all.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I'm actually planning, I'm hosting Thanksgiving here. I got my family coming in from Western New York. We're planning on who's bringing what dishes, because obviously we got to kind of plan around, because we won't have all the time to normally prepare food with the game
we got to
going
plan
on.
our shows and stuff.
And then I got to come up here and do the show while they're finishing getting dinner ready down there. It's going to be, crazy to manage that way, but really looking forward to it. And like I said, I think that the team is still as good as we were excited about early in the year, but at some point, you are what your record says you are, and you have to be able to get that right. We need to get this to 7-3. We need to get this to 8-3 going into that division stretch to be able to get these, this Cleveland and Detroit weeks are games you cannot afford to drop. These are games that good teams have to put away. We need to get our stuff together here, show that we are one of the best teams. Maybe we're not in a tier all by ourselves like it looked like early on in the season, but we didn't all of a sudden drop back into average, or I wonder if we're going to make the playoffs. No, we're just one of the best teams in the league. But that's easier to say than it is to really believe when you don't see it for a little bit. So let's see that this week, get back to what we know they're capable of, and really get right.
Here's the thing, Greg, and it and I know it is. One, these are 2 good weeks for that offensive side of the ball to get right. If you're going to have 2 jumpstart, hey, let's try some stuff and get this going, now's the time. But once they do get going, whether it's from health or just clicking at the right time, there isn't a team in the league that can be the type of freight train that the Buffalo Bills can be. And so the place that I'm at is I don't care what seed they end up at. They just need to be playing good football at the right time heading into the playoffs, hopefully at as full health as they can be at that time, because I don't think there's a team in the league that wants to see them on the schedule coming in the playoffs, playing hot with full health. That's a freight train. No one wants that smoke. And I do think still they will be at the end of it a tier all by themselves. I think that is how deep they are and how good this team can be once they get back right.
Absolutely. We just need to see it and get back to everybody believing that, because we know the talent and capabilities they have. But appreciate it. You guys were awesome tonight. The chat was great. We're excited to get back to normal here. Aaron and I will be with you guys ready to roll as soon as this game ends on Sunday afternoon. So we're looking forward to everything that's there. Make sure you're checking out all the shows across the Cover One Network. We shared that clip from the Cover One Fantasy Show. Chris Chous giving out great recommendations. He's also going to be shifting into kind of draft work and what rookies to look for hardcore in dynasty mode and being able to get ready there. So a really good draft expert to be able to jump into the fray with Russell Brown and the guys who do work there. All the stuff going on with all the other shows. Make sure you're checking on everything we have. But on behalf of Aaron Quinn, I'm Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are